A year ago, if you told anyone that Gary Payton II would be one of the hottest prospects in the NBA, they'd probably think, there's a Gary Payton too? Jokes aside, it's pretty amazing how far GP2 has come over the past year. And it seems like this is only the beginning for what will hopefully be a highly successful career. In this video, we'll be taking a look at Gary Payton's career, how he proved the doubters wrong, and some untold truths that'll absolutely shock you. Let's begin. Why he's called the Mitten. If you're already aware of the original Gary Payton, this nickname shouldn't really come as a shock to you. Gary Payton I was nicknamed the Glove just because of how amazing his defensive abilities were. Those defensive abilities led to Payton becoming an NBA Hall of Famer and an undisputed legend. When GP2 made his debut, it was hard not to compare him to his father. While his skills weren't as sharpened as his father's, he was still pretty good on the defensive side. That's why NBA commentators started referring to him as something just slightly below gloves, mittens. Thus, the Mitten nickname was born for GP2. GP2 isn't the biggest fan of this nickname though, and he has said that he prefers the nickname Young Glove, which, to be fair, is still pretty catchy, but not nearly as funny. He was quite a decorated college basketball player. GP2 was always expected to follow in his father's footsteps and become a successful basketball player. He started playing basketball in high school and eventually got into the Salt Lake Community College for their basketball team. He quickly emerged as one of the best players on the team, and in 2014, he was voted as the best college player in the entire region. After that, he decided to follow the example of his father once again and join the Oregon State basketball team, where he became only the second player to have a triple-double in a game. The only other player to do that was his father. Seems like the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. After a successful college career, he decided to go for the 2016 NBA draft and was considered an exciting prospect. His early NBA dreams failed. Despite his college career being rather successful, as soon as GP2 listed himself for the NBA draft, his so-called flaws started to become apparent. The main issue was his age. He was 24 years old in 2016, which is absolutely ancient for an NBA draftee. His playing style was also considered old and outdated by some, with many saying that he was just trying to mimic his father without being as good as him. With all of that stacked up against him, when the day of the 2016 draft came, he was unfortunately left undrafted. It must have been pretty devastating for him, but despite being left out of the draft, he was eventually signed by the Houston Rockets for the 2016 Summer League. This was not, however, any kind of long-term deal. His career was considered doomed. After a short stint with the Rockets, he was eventually signed by the Milwaukee Bucks. Instead of actually using GP2 on their main team, the Bucks decided to relegate him to their G team called the Wisconsin Herd. Even the name is terrible. The Bucks ended up waiving him, and he was signed by the Lakers to play in their G team. After this, it was pretty much the same thing over and over again. A team would sign him, they would make him play for the G team, and then they would waive him. By 2021, he was playing for the Raptors 905, which actually gave him a chance to show off some of his skills. He was named the G League's Defensive Player of the Year in 2021, and it finally seemed like he was starting to get some attention. Soon enough, he would finally have his big break. Why he was chosen by the Warriors. The Warriors initially signed GP2 to a 10-day contract in April of 2021, which was later extended for another 10 days before it was extended for the rest of the season. It seemed like the Warriors would actually stick with the player this time, but right before the 2021-22 season started, GP2 was waived. No reason for this was given, but just a few days later, he re-signed GP2 to an undisclosed contract. The actual reason was pretty simple. The Warriors needed a strong guard, and there wasn't a better or cheaper option available to them than GP2. They didn't have a lot of money to spend because they had already spent so much on players like Curry and Thompson, so a player from the G League was a natural option to fill their final spot. He started to prove his worth. GP2's contract with the Warriors was initially not guaranteed to last the entirety of the season, which is why he was still so worried about his future. But in January of 2022, Warriors coach Steve Kerr announced that GP2 was now signed to a guaranteed contract. This means that his contract is worth at least $1.49 million, which might not seem like much when compared to players like Steph Curry, but it's quite a lot when you consider the G League's base salary of only $37,000. GP2 was well worth this salary, considering he averaged 3.7 rebounds, 16.9 minutes, and 7.9 points per game during the season, proving to be an essential player for the Warriors. His powerful putback dunk. If you just needed an example of how good GP2 really is, look no further than this incredible putback dunk against the Phoenix Suns on Christmas Day. It came after Steph Curry narrowly missed a three-pointer in the middle of the first quarter, with GP2 appearing seemingly out of nowhere to make the dunk over Booker and Ayton. Because of this dunk, the Warriors now had an 8-point average in the game. This wasn't the first time GP2 impressed practically everyone during a game, and it certainly won't be the last. The dunk was getting tens of thousands of likes all over Twitter, and it definitely did a lot to make GP2 immensely popular with fans. He's one of the best defensive guards in the NBA right now. This might sound like a pretty bold statement to make, but it's absolutely true. GP2 is one of the best defensive guards in the NBA right now, and the only reason why he's not in the conversation is that he doesn't get enough minutes on the court. As Coach Steve Kerr said, he's absolutely fearless and seizes any opportunity that's given to him during a game. As long as he gets more chances to prove himself, there might not be any players that can compete with him in this category. What makes him so unique? GP2 is quite a unique player to say the least, but as unique as he may be, most commentators can't seem to put their finger on what exactly makes him so distinctive. Stephen Curry had an interesting assessment of the player. He said that GP2 is basically the tallest 6'3" guy in the world because of the fact that he can be super intimidating on the court, while also being just as agile as some of the smaller players. Steve Kerr said that GP2 is almost impossible for guys to guard, and they basically have to treat him like a big guy, saying that he can find any kind of gaps and he makes incredibly unique plays on both ends. With that kind of praise teammates like Steph Curry and Steve Kerr have for GP2, we can expect him to stay in the Warriors for a long time, and perhaps he can even get a better contract next year. He can't be ignored. It's crazy to think that GP2 is 29 years old now, and we're just starting to see how good he is. If it were any other basketball player, they would have probably thrown in the towel before they even got a chance to be recognized for their talent. It seems like despite having the advantage of being a second-generation player, GP2 just wasn't given a chance to shine by anyone in the NBA. But he never really gave up. He kept giving amazing performance after performance, and it finally led to him getting the actual attention from the Warriors. There's no telling where GP2's career will lead from here, but for the first time, it seems like it's going to be quite exciting. That's a wrap for the 10 untold truths about Gary Payton. I'll see you in the next one.